Now, Janet tells me that while they were eating dinner, the trailer that was across from theirs was blown over and landed on top of theirs. And even though Prosperity was caught underneath it, she says she just wanted to eat her ice cream. Lieutenant Ard says that after an officer shot the bear right outside the Sonic on South Irby Street, that it took off running. And they chased him for about a quarter of a mile until he collapsed right outside the Citizens Bank on Freedom Boulevard. In the summer heat, the temperature in the inside of your car can heat up in just minutes or even seconds. I left this thermometer in the inside of the car, and within less than just 5 minutes, it was already in the triple digits. When the children first arrive for their appointment, the pediatrician reads them a book, so no matter how the appointment ends, it always begins on a good note. To give you a better idea of how much shopping locally does benefit the community, for every $100 you spend at a locally owned and operated store, about $68 of that comes back to the community. For every $100 you spend at a national chain store, only $43 of that comes back to the community. While making snowmen and snow angels seem to be pretty popular among the kids, the thing that they seem to enjoy the most was having snowball fights. And the school is just the second in the district after Lucy T. Davis Elementary to use the latest technologies like iPads and this smart board. And because barrel racing meant so much to Sean, his family and friends say that this event would mean the world to him. And while Flower says that the heavy rain is bad for the wheat, he also says that it's really good for the corn. Here at Balloons Etc., they're currently not affected by the helium shortage, but over the summer they were without helium for almost 8 weeks, causing the store to almost close. And it's important to be cautious of the items that you keep in your yard because when filled with water, bird baths and little toys like this can become breeding grounds for mosquitoes. One of the next big steps in the revitalization includes renovating the Behringer building, which sits directly next to the hotel. Once it's complete, it'll include several new offices, retail stores, and even some restaurants. And although Hope refused to comment, her family tells me that she couldn't be happier to be home where she can continue to grieve over the loss of her 4 young children. To help get you started on making an educated decision, there are some tools out there that can help. This one on nerdwallet.com compares the average hospital charge and Medicare payment for different procedures at different hospitals, while this one is a government database that compares the average hospital charge and Medicare payment for different procedures at different hospitals. According to Florence County's codes of ordinance, a sexually oriented club cannot be within 1,000 feet of a school, church, or residential lot. And yet the Beaver Lodge sat right across the street from a church and between 2 residential lots. In the state of South Carolina, penalties for animal neglect and cruelty charges are considered very weak when compared to other states. Most of them are just misdemeanors.
It was just peaceful, a downpour, and then the girls were pinned under this.
As Jeanette Canteen, her daughter, and 3 granddaughters were eating dinner on Tuesday evening, the unthinkable happened. Within just seconds, a tornado swept through their mobile home park, destroyed their home, and left her youngest granddaughter pinned underneath the rubble.
It was though God cupped his hands like this, and all the debris fell around the girls. Even they had glass and she was stuck under the wall, but they could have been killed. All 3 of them could have been killed.
Now, Janet tells me that while they were eating dinner, the trailer that was across from theirs was blown over and landed on top of theirs. And even though Prosperity was caught underneath it, she says she just wanted to eat her ice cream.
And then I got my dessert, and then I just had one bite. And then the kitchen went to the side. We were walking.
So much.
You didn't eat your ice cream either.
No, I didn't eat my ice cream either. We're getting that ice cream.
And despite losing practically everything, Jeanette and her family have maintained an optimistic outlook on life because they didn't lose the most important thing, each other.
It's wonderful. Everyone's alive. That's all that matters. Everyone's alive. We can always replace this someday, but I cannot replace my grandchildren. So I'm happy, if that makes sense.
And as she looks at the rubble that was once her home, she smiles and through laughter quotes an internet sensation.
Ain't nobody got time for that, to be sad and depressed, and we're alive. And that's all we've got time for, is to be alive and go forth.
In Florence County, Kelly Brooker, News 13.
It's a game. It's occupation, but it's a game.
On Wednesday, Wells Flowers was able to harvest the wheat at his farm for the first time since last week. The heavy rains we've had over the last few days have kept him and his employees indoors.
It knocked us out of cutting wheat. It just kind of puts things at a standstill, and then you got to wait on everything to dry out. in order to get back in the field.
He says that when there's too much rain, the wheat gets pushed down.
Right ahead you can see this is where the wheat is lodged. It's laid down.
And he's usually able to pick up less than only 50% of the lodged wheat, and all that moisture affects its quality as well.
So it affects the test weight, which affects its final destination, the feed mills and everything else. They tend to dock you.
And while Flowers says that the heavy rain is bad for the wheat, he also says that it's really good for the corn. And although it's good for the corn, they haven't been able to get into the fields because of the rain. But because the wheat is at its full potential, harvesting that is their first priority.
I tend to think farmers aren't ever happy. It's either too wet, too dry, too hot, too cold, everything costs too much, the market's not working your way. Or I try to say about this field that I'm satisfied. I'm not necessarily happy, but I'll take what I can get.
So when the sun comes out and the land dries up, Flowers and his workers try to get as much done in a day's work as they can and hope for the rain to stay away. In Darlington, Kelly Brucker, News 13. Tony Surridge has worked outside in the sun for most of his life, but he says he's always done his best to protect himself from the sun's UV rays.
I did power line construction, and we were required to wear long sleeve shirts, you know, for fire, and hats and stuff like that. And I didn't wear much sunscreen. I'm real fair-skinned and I burn real bad, so I never went without a t-shirt or nothing like that because I would blister.
But in February, he noticed a lump underneath his right arm, and when he went to the doctor to get it checked out, he learned that it was stage 4 melanoma and that it had spread to his lungs. The culprit, a mole on his stomach.
It had a little blackness around it and red on top. And he said it grew a root over to a vein and pumped the melanoma into the bloodstream.
When Surridge first discovered the lump, it was about the size of a golf ball. And just 3 weeks later, when Dr. John Schilling removed the lump, it was the size of a softball. According to Dr. Schilling, early detection is key in melanoma, and he says that's easy as long as you remember the ABCDs.
Looking at a suspicious mole or spot on your skin. The A stands for asymmetry. You look at the mole, if it's a perfect circle, it's probably not a problem. The B, it stands for border. If the border is ragged or notched around the mole, then that could be an increased sign of a melanoma or skin cancer. A C stands for color. If it's all one tan brown color, it's fine. But if it has a multitude of colors, that's more suspicious. And the D stands for diameter. Anything greater than 1/4 of an inch. And that's about the size of a eraser on the head of a pencil.
And when it comes to melanoma, he says the best treatment is prevention, which starts with using the right sunscreen. Dr. Schilling says that whenever you're out in the sun, you should be wearing a sunscreen with an SPF of at least 15 or higher, and that you should be reapplying it every hour. He also says that ones that are water resistant like this one tend to work best.
Areas that people forget, especially the scalp, the tips of the ears, the nose, the cheeks. You know, people wear sunglasses, and a lot of times they don't put sunscreen all around their face, and I think that's really important. But don't forget the tops of your knees, your feet when you're laying out in the sun too, because those are also areas exposed.
Since his diagnosis 4 months ago, Surridge doesn't take any chances when it comes to the sun. If he has to be outside, he has on sunscreen with an SPF of at least 45, and he reapplies it often. He also encourages others to check themselves for suspicious spots or moles.
I mean, check your bodies for lumps and look over the moles, and if they look strange to you and look like they've changed, then have a doctor check them immediately.
In Florence, Kelly Brucker, News 13. From a distance, this may just look like any old construction site, but as you take a closer look, you'll find yourself looking back in history.
Some of these are rim sherds of a vessel. It could be a jar or a plate.
Back in 2009, archaeologists discovered some broken pieces of pottery at the site in Florence County, and after a few more years of investigating the area, fragments of what they believe to be human bones were found as well, leading the team to begin an extensive data recovery phase. Lead archaeologist Sean Norris says that the site sites like this one are rather rare and that it's also one of the first of its kind in the county.
As we're digging now, every layer we come up, we find a number of pottery fragments, some lithic flakes where somebody was working on building or making an arrowhead.
After investigating the area, Norris says they believe the site was once a semi-permanent or permanent campsite for a Native American tribe and that they're hoping to find either some cooking or storage units.
We want to see if we can find some houses and some structures. And there is the possibility of potential human remains within these structures.
Several tribes in the state have been contacted already about the findings, and while they're supportive of the archaeologists, they want to make sure that any human remains found are treated with caution.
That deserve the same type of respect that anyone, any citizen of the United States or anywhere in the world deserve, which is the respect of reburying them. They were buried for a reason.
Norris says that if any human remains are discovered, that they will be repatriated to the tribes in the area and will be reburied with tribal approval. In Florence County, Kelly Brucker, News 13. When it comes to saving money, we all want to save in any way that we can. And with medical costs becoming what they are, saving money when it comes to health care is more important than ever.
And so as we're getting into this era where we really have to count our pennies, we're going to have to be making decisions, and people need to make educated decisions about, do I really need this $100 a month medication? Do I really need this CT scan? Or maybe an echo would do just as well. What's the best choice?
McLeod Medical Center's Chief Medical Officer Dr. Coy Irvin and Chief Financial Officer Fulton Irvin both say that when it comes to saving money on medical costs, you need to first have a conversation with your insurance company.
So much of what a patient pays depends on the contract that insurance carrier has with the hospital, what level of insurance coverage they've bought with their employer, and then at any given time, how far along, how much of their deductible they've met, or how much copay they have to pay.
Dr. Irvin says that because of how expensive tests and procedures can get, it's also important to talk with your physician after your insurance company about making an educated decision.
Well, maybe if they know in the front end what it costs, then they can make a judgment. Do I really want this test? Do I need to go forward with this? Maybe I need to think about it.
To help get you started on making an educated decision, there are some tools out there that can help. This one on nerdwallet.com compares the average hospital charge and Medicare payment for different procedures at different hospitals, while this one is a government database that compares the average hospital charge and Medicare payment for different procedures at different hospitals. To give you an idea of how each site works, I've compared the cost of hip replacement surgery at Carolina's hospital system and McLeod Medical Center using each website. On the nerdwallet.com site, the average charge for the procedure at Carolina's is a little over $100,000, and the average Medicare payment is about $12,500. Using the same website, the average charge at McLeod is about $30,000 less, but the Medicare payment is actually more. Using the government database, the average covered charge for the same procedure is about $85,000, while the average Medicare payment is about $20,000. The government database also states that the average covered charge for the procedure at Carolina's is about $98,500, while the average Medicare payment is a little more than 10% of that. Dr. Irvin says that because the government website is only comparing what Medicare pays, it's really only helpful to those who have Medicare. And even then, he says it doesn't tell you much. It's just a good place to begin your search.
Because of the way Medicare sets up the way they want to be paid, you have to change all your payments based on that, or your charges based on that. So the charges vary significantly, and that doesn't tell you a lot. Charges and what we actually get paid are two different things. So it's nice to see that there's information there, but it doesn't really give you what you need.
Like Dr. Irvin, Irvin says that the website is leaving out a lot of important information.
Well, how do you compare hospital to hospital? Because there may very well be significant differences in the severity of the illnesses of the patients within that particular diagnosis code.
Dr. Irvin says that the NerdWallet site gives the consumer helpful information and that it really helps patients who are self-pay or have high deductibles. But he says that one of the best ways to save money in medical costs is to spend it before you're stuck with medical bills for a problem that may have been preventable.
We don't spend much on the front end, we spend it on the back end. Let's start spending more of it on prevention, weight loss, diabetes control, hypertension, instead of spending it in the ICU in the last month of their life.
In Florence, Kelly Brucker, News 13. Albert Johnson is known throughout the PD as Uncle Albert. It's a nickname that has stuck with him ever since he released his famous barbecue sauce 15 years ago. And he says that just about everyone in the area has tried his sauce.
So I don't think there's anywhere in town that I haven't given a bottle of my sauce to. Every place I go, I give samples, and they always call me and buy more.
Uncle Albert says that his sauce is so good that people use it on everything from pizza and ribs to chicken and grits and eggs. It's become so popular that it's sold throughout the state and parts of North Carolina in stores like IGA, Piggly Wiggly, Bilo, and Food Lion. To keep up with demand, he's in the kitchen twice a week, making nearly 400 gallons of it.
I sell it as fast as I can make it. It's everywhere.
And Uncle Albert says that his recipe is a secret. He's the only one who does the mixing, and he's not letting the secret out of the bag anytime soon.
Only the male members of my family knows my secret recipe. No women will ever have my recipe.
And why is that?
Because they might give it to another man.
And even though he keeps the women in his life far from his sauce recipe, he includes one very special woman on every bottle.
I have written on every label, "This is dedicated in the memories of my mother, Miss Mabel H. Johnson." I know she's proud of me now.
And when asked what makes his sauce so special, the answer is simple.
Because mine is homemade, and I'm Uncle Albert, and I put love in mine.
In Darlington, Kelly Brucker, News 13.